breakthrough meeting. It's certainly historic in terms of those people who have raised their voices or dared to raise their voices against the government in recent years. Some of them are activists and intellectuals, critics of the government who have in the past, some of them even been locked up for their troubles, but they don't exactly represent the people on the streets, the ordinary rank and file protesters who have been out there waving banners and marching for the past 3 or 4 months. What they are is at least a cross-section of people that the government has allowed to gather to start this process that President Assad has called of national dialogue. And the idea is to discuss strategies for a peaceful transition for democracy, to try and bring an end to the crisis in the country. The man who was leading the meeting told us a bit more about what he hoped to achieve.
As any Syrian hope, we want to go out of this crisis. We want to make actually a real political message to everyone. Our demand is part of the Syrian people, and our demand is the demand of the Syrian people. What we want to say, we want to convey this message in political way.
Wasn't exactly an open meeting in the full sense of the word that we might understand. We met one man there who hadn't been allowed in.
I don't know why. They say that only the people invited are to go in. So I informed them that I'm a free man, don't belong to any party, and I have many solutions to return the people back to communal attachment and hope for the better future.
I'm joined by the Syrian activist Talal al Mayharni, who is part of the conference. The news coming out of Syria today is very disturbing. What do you think's prompted this crackdown?
Well, it is disturbing news. It seems that there is so organized and well planned, so going through sensitive cities such as Deir ez-Zor in the east, and which is mainly tribal area, and Hama, which actually holds sort of historical sensitivity. It's critical to read what the message that the regime wants to convey from this escalation. But it seems that from the beginning of the protests since March, there is sort of strategy followed by the regime in order to draw people to be involved in counter-violence. The regime knows that if this happens, he will be the winner. Because it is stronger in terms of weaponry, and at the same time it may give the crackdown sort of legitimacy.
And the regime has spun this line all along that there has been violence against them. Is there any evidence of that as far as you can tell? I visited Syria last month, and from my point of view, I met lots of people around, and at least in the big cities, and I didn't find any evidence for these sort of gunmen or gangs. This is basically what the regime is saying, and if that is correct, that means for more than 5 months now, the regime is not successful in basically capturing and arresting these gunmen, and that may reflect sort of inefficacy. And it's not a good news for the regime as well, if we want to believe that. And Reem Haddad, who is a sort of spokeswoman for Syrian state TV, forces had to go into Hama because people were effectively being suppressed, and she painted a picture as if the security forces were saving them. What would you say to that?
Well, every time that the security forces and army intend to enter a city, they basically start to speak about such a news. For more than 5-6 weeks, there was no security forces in Hama, there was no army in Hama, there was no one casualty or one victim. Just today, early in the morning, when the army start to enter Hama, we start to hear now the horrible news from there, and so far, as I know, is about, and this what the news saying, is about 49 victims in Hama only of wounded people. So now here imposes a question.
In the Syrian town of Al-Hula over the weekend. Sam Abrahams is the spokesperson for the Syrian Network for Human Rights. He explained to us the events that unfolded in Al-Hula earlier this afternoon. He was speaking from Damascus to one of our producers, Mark Williams.
Heavy shelling from different weapons, invading the city, arresting the people, kill them by field execution, or arresting them. Some of them return killed under torture. Some of them keep arresting and keep torture them. Invading the houses, then start gathering the children together by knife and by also gangs. After they kill them, they shoot them by the gangs also. Less than 10 years. Who will accept that in 2012? Our reaction, actually, we are totally shocked from this kind of criminality. This actually attack not against the Syrian children, it's this attack against humanity itself. Bashar al-Assad and his criminal security forces and army, those are the source of darkness, of terrorists. After the massacres, he is keep killing and keep ordering his army to killing the people. Day before yesterday, 95 persons have been killed. Yesterday, same scenario. The whole world should hold the responsibility about what's going on in Syria. 49 children killed.
The regime says they're not responsible for the children who were killed. What's your response to that?
He said we didn't kill anyone. He said we don't have any detainees. Sometimes people from inside Syria doing that. Sometimes, from the moon. Sometimes the family killed their children. No one actually believed those people. Those actually become now joke persons. No one believes them actually.
No one in Syria believes that the regime wasn't responsible for this massacre?
No one at all. We cannot deny around 1,000 witnesses. We cannot ignore hundreds of family. They said the Security Council, Bashar al-Assad army, plus Bashar al-Assad himself, plus the Security Council, killed our children. He has only one target actually. He wants the people to be afraid, to stay at home, to leave, follow the regime or the change the regime.
That was Sam Abrahams, a spokesperson for the Syrian Network for Human Rights, speaking with RN Drive's own Mike Williams earlier today via Skype. Now, to add more horror to the situation, if you think it needs any, there have now been unconfirmed reports, have just emerged in the past 24 hours, of a further 41 people being killed in the city of Hama. Now, those of you who are familiar with the history of the region will know the significance of Hama. I mean, this was the site of a very famous massacre in the 1980s. Estimates vary about how many people died, and they vary between figures of, say, 15,000, 17,000 to 40,000. That's the scale of the massacre that we're talking about here. So if you factor that in, a further 41 people reportedly, unconfirmed, having been killed in the last 24 hours, that's an incredibly significant development. Now, joining me to discuss the issue now is Dr. Talal al Mayharni. He's from Building the Syrian State, a group that works with activists in Syria. He joins us from London. Talal, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that is a bit befuddling, I think, to a lot of outside observers is that in spite of this continuing news, the Assad regime continues to enjoy some level of support amongst the Syrian population. How do you explain that?
Yes, well, this is why we are still saying that the situation in Syria is so complex. People have some sort of support that actually goes beyond the political support. Some people see that as a matter of survival. Definitely this is a complete illusion, and if you are in Syria and if you are actually imposed by these brainwashing media from the Syrian regime, you will understand perhaps what is happening there.
Is it as simple as that, or are there also sectarian elements to this, and also the fact that the opposition has been behaving in ways that deserve to be condemned?
Well, to be honest, like the violence that we witness by, let's say, the opposition, it basically can be seen as a reaction. It's not the first action. However, there is an escalation, especially in the last 2 days, and I just want to mention not only Hama and that brutal massacre 2 days ago, there was also yesterday shelling in rural areas of Damascus and also rural areas in Idlib, where there was some sort of really unexplained escalation in the last 2 days by the regime forces for some reason. Although in the last few weeks we couldn't stop the killing, but there was significant decrease in the number of victims by the existence of the UN commonitors.
Sure, but at the same time there are reports, which we often don't talk about, particularly in Western media, of opposition groups being fractured but also resorting to torture. Now you can say that that's a reaction to the state, but there's no need to react to the behaviour of the state by resorting to things like torture. So is the problem here not just as simple as the fact we have a brutal regime, but also that we don't have a credible alternative?
Well, I totally agree with you. I think like over the decades, the regime was successful in emptying the political stage in Syria. So we end up actually with no human resources to work in politics, or basically to believe in politics. Leave politics aside, also the way that the opposition basically approached this crisis wasn't really that professional, largely, and some people just were quite emotional in their reaction, not as we want actually to do. And I totally agree with that. And things now start to be more and more complex. It's not just like the brutal regime. You have reactions that are not also that, they are quite violent. And the people who are silent now, they are more silent, although that they are not pro-regime, by the way. They sympathize with the revolution or uprising, but they cannot really be participating actively in it because they think that this is not ours. So we cannot do that.
Okay, just finally,
you can imagine now the situation with people who are really supporters of the regime. They are now more tense.
Okay, just finally before I let you go, we're hearing increasing calls for intervention. The world must intervene, the world must act. What is less clear is precisely what action that's meant to mean. For example, would it mean Western military intervention? What is the solution here?
Well, I think this is really unrealistic, to be honest. Perhaps either the people are, or like people calling for that, are not aware about the complexity of the international community and the Syrian scene, or maybe they know that, but they just ignore it. The problem is that we are pretty sure that this international community will not take anything actually to stop what is going on. As an alternative, we are really stuck in a very, very difficult situation. I don't claim that we have any solution in our pocket. I don't really also think that anyone has a solution in his pocket. I think, the problem now is more complex than what happened, let's say, 1 year ago, when there was some sort of hope. Now, again and again, we think, and we work quite closely with the UN ministers, and we actually did some sort of success